What's up, y'all? This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Now, you know I go around this planet finding the best humans on it to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. So I found somebody who's going to do just that, and his name is David Wood. He is a former consulting actuary for Fortune 500 companies. He built his world's largest coaching business. He's the author of the book Mouse in the Room, and he has survived a full collapse of his paraglider. Yo, for real? Okay, we got to talk about that. He had a fractured spine. He witnessed the death of his sister at age 7. He's overcome anxiety and depression, and he now helps business owners and leaders become the badass leaders and people that people want to follow. So, David, that is a lot, and I didn't even read your whole bio. How are you doing? How are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling happy and content in this moment. I'm now excited about my trip to Atlanta today. I was nervous about it, but I used one of the tools that I rely on, and I was able to switch it from I'm anxious about this to damn right this is happening. This is
Yeah.
awesome. So and I'm glad to meet you and be on the show. So right now life's pretty good.
Good. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're running today to do some other things, but I'm really excited that you're with us as well. So before we get started into the nitty-gritty of David, we start off with knowing who you are. So David Wood, who are you?
I'm someone who deeply cares and cares more than I realize a lot. You
Mm,
don't see it all the time because I seem like I've got it all together, and sometimes I can come across as aloof, but underneath it is a really big softy. And I think that's the reason I've been coaching for 23 years now.
mm,
And the all healers I think have had some kind of trauma. So
mhm,
as a kid, I
mhm.
didn't learn how to discover my emotions. I didn't learn how to talk about them. I shut a lot of things down. And particularly when I had the trauma of my sister's death, apparently what happens is sometimes you just shut off feelings and you get
Yeah.
really good at thinking. Now, the silver lining is I became great at numbers and business and money and systems. I got paid to go to college, and college was free in Australia. So talk about privilege. I got
Right.
paid to go to college, had a job waiting for me. When I came out, I said, "Nah, I need to travel for a year." And they're like, "Okay, job will be ready for you when you come back." And I got to consult to Sony Music and Ford and Exxon at the age of 24
That's
on Park
awesome.
Avenue. So really privileged background, and I thought life was great until I realized that I wasn't happy and things weren't going well in my marriage. And so someone said, "Why don't you try this personal growth program?" And I said, "No, those guys smile way too much, and they all wear name tags. It's a cult." Well,
It's a
hey, maybe it is a cult, but I don't
cult.
care because I got in
Right.
and they cracked my heart open and they had me realize I knew nothing. This was back when, like 25 years ago. I knew nothing about authenticity,
Right, right,
integrity,
right, right.
true influence, emotional intelligence, and leadership.
Right.
So
Right.
now, and I've spent the last 25 years catching up and
Mhm.
sitting with gurus and going around the world and working out what it means to be human. So now I'm unusual in my coaching in that I don't just focus on someone's business. I do work with business owners, but one session we work on the business and marketing and hiring and systemizing. The next session we might be talking about how their partner's unhappy or they're
Yeah.
not relating with their kid or
Mhm.
they're out of integrity with themselves. And so I'm actually a generalist after
Mhm.
54 years on this planet. There's a long answer to your question about who David Wood is. I'm a geek. I'm a total geek. My nervous system is quite fragile, and so I can't do a lot of things that other people do.
Yeah.
And yet, sometimes I jump off a cliff or a mountain in Nepal and go paragliding, or fly to Atlanta today for my first movie shoot.
Right.
Um,
Oh, fun.
yeah, so there's a long answer to the question.
No, that's a great that's great. That gave me a lot of material. So let's work on that. So
All right.
23 to 25 years ago, you got introduced to self-development.
Yeah.
And well, I have a question. Did you ever go back to that job that was waiting for you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you
They
did.
they
Okay.
they they were very clever. They said, "Why don't you work for us for a year first and save up some money? Then you can travel for a year and you'll have a job waiting when you come back." I'm like,
Right.
"How do you beat that?" So I
Right.
did that. I went back to that company, but I realized when I was traveling for 11 and a bit months around the world that I wanted to keep doing it, but I couldn't
Mhm.
afford to keep doing it. So I realized I really need a job transfer to live in another country so I can be paid while absorbing another culture. And I started talking about it and asking people and whispering in ears. And I got a job interview with the same company over in New York on Park Avenue and got the job at age 23. So that changed my life. I moved over there, and the US is my second home. I've been here 20 years now, and I just keep
That's
on coming
awesome.
back. I can't stay away.
That's great. So, talk to me about your adventures because I know that as I was reading your bio, that you got into a really tragic accident, right, with your paraglider. Can you take us a little
Well,
bit about? Yeah,
tragic is in the eye of the beholder.
right.
Right? So, something that's really traumatic for one person might it could be a pleasant day for another person. I've had a few dramas in life. I once had a full collapse at 300 feet above the ocean, and I was plummeting towards the earth, and I managed to reinflate it at 80 feet
Oh my
above the
goodness.
ocean. So if had that not reinflated, I think I'd be dead
Right.
today. And I kept on flying. I thought, no, I'm just going to learn from this and I'm going to grow. But then 2 years later, I was in Colombia and I was a foot above the ground. I was landing on top of a mountain in Colombia, and a little gust caught my wing and took me back into an area that wasn't quite safe. And I fell from 10 or 15 feet
Mm,
onto my butt. And so it's interesting. The full collapse at 300 feet, I walked away from. The 10 or 15 feet one, I was taken to hospital in an ambulance. I had a compression fracture of the spine. And surprisingly, that was a good day. People say it must have been horrendous. No, what was horrendous was probably the pure terror as I was
mhm.
plummeting. And then I was screaming in agony when I hit because it was very,
I
very
can
painful.
imagine. Yeah.
But within seconds, my mind clicked in and said, I wiggled my toes and I could move them. My mind said, and I've got this on video because I had my GoPro going, and I
Mm,
said out loud, I know what this is. I'm okay. I can move my toes. This is because I'd had a parkour accident. You might be seeing a theme here. I've always been an adventurer and I want to like push the edges. So I had a parkour accident where I had a compression fracture, and I figured this is probably that. And you know what?
mm,
It
mm.
was. The first one was
Wow.
L3. This one was L4. People were nice to me. They were talking in Spanish, and I was very calm. And then they left me alone for an hour under this tin shed while I had to wait for the ambulance. The worst part about that whole story for me was I needed to pee very badly because I've been flying for 2 or 3 hours, and that's a long time for this bladder. And then I've
Right.
been waiting for an hour, and even in the ambulance, when they'd stop the ambulance, and I kept on saying, tengo que
Right.
orinar, they'd stop, and then two of them would roll me over with I've got the
Yeah.
C-spine thing. They'd roll me over, give me a bottle, and look away. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pee. And I was worried about my bladder bursting. And the more I needed to pee, the more I couldn't. That was
Right.
the worst part of the whole day when they finally left me alone with a blanket and a bottle in a hospital bed. One of the best moments of my entire life.
You are a
Oh
trip.
my God. Yeah.
That's
Oh, I
so
got a lot of pee
funny.
stories, but that was a good one.
So how did you go into then from getting into self-development is one thing, but then getting into coaching is another, right?
Right.
So what kind of well, first of all, I didn't even ask you what kind of work were you doing when you were, interviewing for these jobs and everything and you started to shift over into self-development. What were you doing at that time?
I was a consulting actuary.
Okay.
So for people who don't know what that is, they're the ones who work out what the insurance premium would be so
Right.
that 100 years from now, the insurance company won't be insolvent. So really complex statistics and mathematical models and financial projections.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm a nerd, right?
Right.
I just happen to be a nerd with a personality, and people are like, "You're an actuary? What?"
Right.
So I was a little bit like a fish out of water. But when I did this course, I found that I couldn't help coaching people in the course, like, because I retain things and I match patterns.
Okay.
And
Yeah, yeah.
someone would be struggling with something. I'd say, "Well, did you hear what the teacher said yesterday morning about 9 a.m.? Why don't you try that?" And they try it. And I changed somebody's life overnight. A woman who'd been withholding an affair. She'd had an affair, and that's a secret she kept for 10 years from her husband, faced the possibility with me of coming clean purely for the sake of integrity and to give him the choice.
Mhm.
I'm getting goosebumps right now, to give him the choice of whether or not he wanted to stay with her.
Mhm.
And I watched her with tears streaming down her face, screw up her courage, and she went and did it. And she came back and reported to the class that the two of them felt that they were floating on air 6 feet above the ground in love that whole weekend after coming together in honesty. And I was hooked. I'm like, all right, show
Mhm.
me this coaching stuff. Show me how it works. So I kept on. I did a whole bunch of courses with that company. I keep on meeting with teachers. I've got my own coach right now. I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And then as I learn, I get to pass on maybe something that I learned 30 years ago to a business owner, or it might be something that I've learned this morning that is
Mhm.
working.
Mhm.
Some people I think like to present an idea like, "Hey, all my work is done. I got it all together," and that's a valid model. But if I can relate and I've got real empathy because I was
Yeah.
thrown last week, I will
Yep.
tell my clients. I will get down in the hole right with them,
Yep.
and I'll say, "I totally understand. Here's something that might work for you." So I forget the question now, but that was fun answering it.
No, I mean, I think that's really great and honest. That's honest because the truth is right, David? I mean, we're growing, we're evolving, we're trying
Yeah,
new things all the time. And so if a coach tells you they got everything together, I don't know how much I would believe that. Although I think experience is good, it speaks volumes, right?
yeah,
When you say you have 20 something years under your belt, but if you're telling me you have it all together and you learn nothing new, that is a flag to me,
yeah.
right?
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I'll be transparent. I found out a couple of weeks ago, two people in my acting class had a problem with me, and they didn't tell me. They went and told the teacher. I felt my ego was hit.
Mhm.
Like I was devastated because I try really hard to communicate well. I've written books on communication,
Right.
and now I find out
Right.
people were unhappy. And then a week later, um, I lost a $200,000 coaching contract that I thought was pretty stable, and it was like, that's a big number,
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. And so it shows you where the work is yet to be done.
Yeah.
And so I had to go through it just like anybody else. Now, I will say I'm feeling pretty proud that some of those things I moved through in like the first one 24 hours. I think the next one was maybe a week to really process it and go into the ins and outs and feel the feelings. But my work is likely never ever to be done.
Right.
I coach business owners from earning as low as 200,000 a year up to 100 million a year. And a lot of these people, quite similarly, have got a lot of stuff worked out.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
high performers,
Right.
but we've all got our shadows and we've all
That's
got
right.
those blind spots and we've all got the parts where something could actually get us and go, "Oh,
Mhm.
ouch." And in those moments, it can be very hard to navigate through it alone or even with the 20, 30 good friends you have. And that's when I personally will reach out to my coach and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thrown. I cannot see which end is up right now. And then, we talk it through, get square, and then it's like, okay, thank you. I think I know the way forward right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's my goal, is to provide that to people, both when they're really struggling, um, which ideally is very rare, but also when things are good and they
Mm-hmm.
just want to go to great. Because I want to make the distinction, in my mind, therapy is usually working with people who might be struggling a lot and maybe in more than one area, maybe. And I can't speak for therapists, but coaching, I used to work with people like that, and it just wasn't rewarding for me. I can do it, but it's more fun for me to work with people who are successful, kicking ass, taking names, already doing
Yeah.
some great stuff. And every now and then, yes, there'll be something that throws them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
mainly we can look at going from good to awesome instead of
Mm-hmm.
going from really bad to good. That's just not my zone. But I have a lot of respect for people who do that work, because we need it all.
Yeah, yeah, we do. But you're the same for your coach that you look for in your client, right? Like you're a high performer as well. So you reach out to your client, coach, because your coach is dealing with a high performer too, that knows what he's doing and just
Right.
wants to go to that next step. It's
What
just,
she's
it's
doing.
yeah,
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 and then she's
yep,
got a coach and she's got her teachers as well, and
right,
the whole circle goes round.
yeah,
It's so hard to do it for ourselves. You can't read the label from inside the jar, and I'll
mm-hmm,
tell you, Nina, I often assume I'm very arrogant, and I often assume I'm the smartest person in the room, and in many rooms it may be true, but I can't see what I can't see. And my
right,
coach, like one example, I wasn't feeling happy where I live because there's some noises in this apartment building, and I couldn't move because I'd already worked it out, and there are good reasons not to move. And she helped me see, wait a minute, aren't those reasons kind of historic? Like, you had all these things you had to focus on, so you didn't have the space to move. But now you've launched your book, you've got your acting school set up, you're doing this and that, and you've got a bit of space now. Isn't that historic? Hadn't seen it.
right,
Had it
right,
right under my nose.
right,
It's like,
right,
you know what? I
yeah,
do have the space and the surplus to move now. So it's oh, and the other thing about coaching, and now I'm talking to people, maybe if you haven't had a coach and you're not sure about where it kicks in. A guy asked me yesterday, so you're like a consultant, you come in with the answers. And I said, well, look, after 20 something years of business coaching, I got a lot of good ideas, but at least half the coaching sometimes is I'll ask the questions that have the client work out their great idea, or as they're talking it out, they go, oh, snap. And I've had that
yeah,
multiple times. Just
yeah,
prepping for the coaching session, I get insights. And then while I'm talking out the problem, sometimes it just becomes so clear what needs to happen. So coaching isn't always rocket science with a genius, although that's
right.
great if you can get it. It's really creating a space where you focus on your life and your business for at least 30 minutes a week
That's it.
and see how you can be doing better.
Yeah, that is so true. It's one of the biggest joys I think I found in my life is coaching. I think it has really I've coached for a while, but it's beautiful to see the transformation like you said, just even in that example that you used with the infidelity, right? When you can impact somebody's life that way, that it's just something about it that's just absolutely addicting. It could be addicting to be a coach, I think, right? I'm enjoying it so much. So, and I'm learning a lot about myself. Like it sounds like that's what you're doing too, David. Like you're really
Oh,
sitting back and learning tons about yourself in the process. That's
still.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a sore point.
Yeah.
Oh, ego doesn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
Right?
I'm worried about being shunned by a community because it's happened
Right.
before, and people
Right.
talk, oh, okay, and then pull out the
Yeah.
tools and do the work. I'm going to be doing work on the plane because I'm in a spiritual awakening program now, and there's a lot of tapping from
Oh,
emotional freedom technique
yeah.
involved in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, that gives me something to do on the plane.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
helpful. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
Tapping. Yeah, it's good
Yeah. Oh,
stuff.
it's so
Good
many
stuff.
tools. One of the problems though is knowing the information doesn't really help us.
Yeah.
I, I got I got I got one client who's probably he's doing really well. Company's doing like 20 million a year. They're doing great. And one thing he said, he's like, a lot of the stuff you're giving me, not all of it, but some of it I've heard before. I already know it. But because I've paid you and I'm showing up in this, I actually go and do the homework and I try it out. And some of this stuff's actually really working.
Yeah.
I I
Yeah.
realized this morning I was given these great stretches by a body guru, and I haven't been doing it, and I'm complaining that my shoulders are tight in the morning. It's like some of the we all know how to get healthy, but that
Yes.
information doesn't get us healthy.
Right.
It's whatever's going to get you into action often, and that's
That's
where I
it.
think
That's it.
I'm a fan of coaching because like when I have my session with my coach, I want to know what are my actions, what am I committing to, what am I writing down,
Yeah.
and how am I going to set it up so that I will remember to do those things,
Right.
and it
Right.
doesn't just become a nice idea. Because if you
Right.
rely on that, if you rely on nice ideas at the right time and for everything to fall in your lap, um, it might be working well for you, and if it is, great. Like going in by flow is a very valid method. But for people who are like, I like what I got and I want more, I want to shift my operating
Yeah.
system, I want to upgrade, that's when we got to like put some things into time and space. And
That's it.
that's where the nerdy side of me and the systems side from those first 27 years of life come in so handy because I'm really great at translating deep insights into time and space.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. So talk to me about your book. Talk to me about Mouse in the Room.
I would love
Is
to.
Yeah, is
Would
that
love to.
recently published?
Yeah, June. It
Oh,
came out
wow.
in
Okay.
June. Um, Mouse in the Room because the elephant is not alone. That's the title, and it's
I
a
love
book.
it.
It's basically how to lead yourself and others at home and at work. So it's a leadership book, and it's a
Mm.
leadership book because. Well, wait, I'll pause on that. Thomas Leonard, who's sometimes credited as the father of modern coaching, said 80% of business coaching is personal. And I was on a hike with a man who's maybe 75 and he's mentored and coached a lot of people. And his viewpoint on coaching, on business coaching, was that it all comes back to relationships,
Yep. I agree.
all of it. So I wrote this book because I found in my life, as a kid, no one said to me, "What are you feeling, David? What are
Right.
you feeling? Oh, you're feeling angry? Say more about that. Where
Mhm.
is that in your body? Do you want to
Mhm.
beat a
Mhm.
pillow? I can totally get why you're angry. We said we're going to the zoo and now we're not. That makes a lot of sense. That wasn't the upbringing I had, and most humans didn't have that. So we
Mhm.
learned to hide a lot of our experience and just let out to the world what we think is going to fly. And that's great. It's a valid survival mechanism. You're not going to blurt out a whole bunch of stuff because you might cause
Right.
some damage. But I wrote this book because we all know the expression, the elephant in the room, and we should address it. If I showed up here without a shirt on, and once I was on a podcast interview and the guy actually had no shirt, that's an elephant in the room. It's like, wait a minute. And if you say nothing, it's weird.
Right.
So, so
Right.
right. And there's a disconnection straight away. So, yes,
Right.
we could address the elephant. But I wrote the book because what about all the creatures in the room that are much more subtle? What about your feelings? What
That's
about
good. That's
your
good.
your thoughts that you haven't shared? What about maybe you felt disappointed by someone last week and you don't want to say anything because it'll be weird? Maybe you're feeling, oh, I was on the phone to someone who let me try out her guest house for a few days to see if it would be a fit for me. And on the phone, as I was telling her no, I got a little emotional because she was such a great host and she brought me like chicken wings and food at night and whatever. And that's a mouse. The fact that I was feeling a little emotional
Yeah.
on the phone, and I just named it. I said, I'm feeling a touch emotional. It meant a lot to me that you provided such care. You could be disappointed with someone. You could be attracted to someone. You could be annoyed that they're late to a meeting. You might have a desire mouse that you want to be more included, or you want more appreciation in your
That's good.
relationship. All of
Mhm.
these things are valid mice that could be named. And in the book, we have a chapter on why they don't get named. One is that you probably haven't spotted them. Some of
Right.
them you're not even aware of. They'll just come out as complaint. So getting clear on them is the first step. Secondly, you probably don't have a good roadmap on how to name those things. So if you just come and blurt it out and say, "Hey, I'm pissed. We need to talk," that's bullshit that I wasn't included in that meeting last week.
Right.
That doesn't go very well.
Right.
So in the book, I include a roadmap. There are 8 different kinds of mice that are identified, and it's a very easy read. It's 100 pages. And
Okay.
I wrote this for mainstream. You don't have to be a communications major. It's a very simple language. And the idea is to encourage you and your family and your staff and your boss and your coworkers to have a new language that says, "Hey, can I name a mouse with you?" Have you heard that
Mm.
expression? It's kind of like an elephant in the room, but it's way smaller.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
way smaller. "Can I name a mouse with you?" I want kids going up to their parents saying, "Mommy, can I name a mouse with you?"
Yeah.
Wouldn't you wouldn't you be like, "Yeah. What do you
Mhm.
once you've read the book, you'd be like, I totally get what's going on."
Mhm.
I think this will bring the world closer together. I think we could all use this no matter what level we're at. So it's an encouragement and a
That's
primer
good.
to have us authentically show up as we are so that
Mhm.
the universe can give us a valid response.
Mhm. I really like that. I really like that. I like that. There's a few things that's going through my mind as you're talking because first of all, I like the play on the book, right? You put an elephant there, but it's called Mouse in the Room. I like that play. That was
Thank you.
very
You've got to look
strategic.
for the mouse.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? You got to. It's in between. It's in. Well, I'm not going to tell you where it is on the book cover. You got to
Right.
find it.
Right. Good. And I also, think about, my brain, I'm always like curious and always looking at things and I'm very visual. So I'm thinking of how mice can also be very destructive, even though they're little. Right.
Mm,
And
yep.
so it makes me think about how that little mouse not being addressed, not being, shown, not being exposed can cause a lot of destruction. Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, it comes out in complaining. It comes out in bad feelings towards somebody, but you don't even know why. Like those kind of things. That's
And
really
they breed.
good.
They
Yeah.
breed as
They
well.
breed. Yes. A
Let's
lot.
take
Yeah.
for example that woman I helped in that first course. We could call her my first unofficial client. She had a huge mouse on her hands,
Right.
in that she'd had an affair for 10 years and not told that. Now, it's not an elephant in the room because both parties don't know about
They
it.
know about it. Right.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
mouse, but it's a rodent of unusual size for any
Mm-hmm.
Princess Bride fans.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. That was destroying the connection.
Right.
Now
Little
you
by
can have,
little. Yep.
yeah, you can have small things. Because I'm in acting class, a lot of things come up for me around acting class. And I realized I was leaving early. You're supposed to get there on time and stay until it finishes. It's a 4-hour class, ends at 11 o'clock at night. I've had chronic fatigue for 15 years. And
Right.
so it's really hard for me. And so I'd been leaving at 9 and it seemed like it was okay. But I realized on an interview like this one that I had a mouse on my hands. I was
Mm.
worried that this was a problem and that someone was going to speak up at some point. Every time I felt like I was slinking out.
Right. Right.
And so finally I went and I sat down with my teacher and I just said, I didn't say, "Can I name a mouse?" because she hadn't read the book, but I said,
Right.
something's been on my mind and it may be nothing, but can I talk about it so I can clear the air and not worry
Yep.
about it? And she's like, "Oh yeah, what's going on?" I said, "I've been leaving at 9. It's working for me really well. But I want to know you to know I mean no disrespect. I have a health issue I'm managing. And as long as you're okay with it, I'd love to continue doing this. And I'm coming to every single class." And she's like, "You do what you need to do. It's totally fine." So now I know if anyone else mentions it or whatever, I've got someone who knows the story who's got
Right.
my back.
Right.
And it hasn't 2 months Hasn't
Right.
been an issue. And even now, I don't feel like I have to like leave when she's not looking. She'll be out there having a cigarette, and I'll just salute and I'll say, "That was a great class. Thank you. Good night." She's like, "All right, go home and rest." In fact, check this out. There was one class where it was starting to get up to 9 o'clock, and she looked over at me across everybody and just mouthed the words, "Don't you need to go?" And she's just
Mhm.
looking at the clock. She was looking out for me
Right.
after
Right.
after months of like trying to like slink out and take care of myself alone. Felt so good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Nina, the magic that's available in movies, the reason we watch movies is to get those magic moments from movies. That
Mhm.
magic is available in our day-to-day life if
Mhm.
we are
Mhm.
willing to take the risk to artfully name our mice. They
Yeah.
won't all go well. I promise you that. They won't all
Yeah.
go well.
That's right.
But even if they don't go well the first time, you're likely to get a second round or a third round. And even if it doesn't go well, how do you know that isn't what wasn't supposed to happen?
Right. Right. And it might not go well, but you know what? I think also, David, is internally you'll feel better. So it will go well. Right. So at
Right?
least if you can at least talk about it, communicate it, expose it, it might not go well. The person might not receive it well. And sometimes
Oh,
that's okay because there's nothing you can really do about that. But you can help you. You can help you out by doing that.
yes. I'm
Right.
so glad you said that. I think
Yeah.
people underrate this concept. We think it's about the external results. No, I was once at a conference with people I was very intimidated by. Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup,
Hmm.
who was generous enough to write the foreword to Mouse in the Room, by the way. It's a beautiful foreword,
Awesome.
plug for Jack's foreword and the book. Uh, John Gray from Mars and Venus, an Oscar-winning producer, Oprah Winfrey's executive producer. I was like so intimidated. I made 4 scary requests of people, bold requests. And I realized when I left the conference that the true win was that I named my mice. I named my desire mice. I felt good. I had taken right action. And as
Good.
someone put it a month ago, I overheard them talking. She said, "I did my half today. That's all I needed to hear. I didn't need to
Right.
hear anything else. I did my half today." And so when you speak up, like I'm about to jump on a plane, right? I
Mhm.
get nervous when the seats bumped from behind me because I had kids picking on me, when I was 8 from
Mhm.
behind me. So it drives me nuts. So now I've learned before anything happens, I just turn around and say, "Hey, how you doing? Can I ask you a big favor?" I get nervous when I fly, and bumping the seat makes it a little harder for me. If you could just put a little extra attention on trying not to bump the seat, I'd be so grateful. And I know accidents happen. There's not a lot of room. Every single person has been like, "Oh, you got it. Yeah, no problem." But even if they didn't, even if they said, "Screw you," I relax
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because
You
I
said
know
it.
I've said it. And sometimes they do bump the seat. There's some people that are a bit unconscious or whatever. For some reason, I'm chilled. I
Right.
spoke up. I did my half.
Right.
And
You
so
did
I
your
don't want,
half, yeah.
yeah.
And you
So
can't
that's
control the
huge.
emotion of the other person. So even like in your example in the airplane, if that other person decides to be a jerk and doesn't care what you say and does what they do, you've done your part. You cannot control someone else.
Right.
But you have spoken up for David, and that's what's important. I agree
And
with that 100%.
and let's take it further. I've now got more information.
Right.
If they're like, if maybe they had a really bad day or they just
Mhm.
like to be argumentative, then I know it's time to move seats,
Right.
right?
Right.
Not that.
Right.
So even if it doesn't seem to go well, my one of my teachers years ago said, "The mind is neurotic, and we don't have a billionth of the information we need to make the perfect decision. We don't
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
We don't know the
Mhm.
future. We don't know all the variables, and we're trying to control it all."
Mhm.
With this book, my aim is to unravel a lot of those layers of control and protection using the roadmap, right? Don't just blurt it out, but use what I call the 3D process, mouse naming in 3D. And by the way, it's a free download. I'll tell listeners at the end where they can download it for free, this worksheet. Um, by using that, I was on a great thread right there, and it just popped out, out of my head. But it was something about this idea of speaking speaking the truth. All right, get rid of all those layers by
Yeah.
using this and doing it artfully. You can come into true connection with someone.
Yeah.
I had a guy on a hike yesterday, just met the guy, sharing me something very deep and personal about his world, started having tears, and it was a beautiful, wonderful connection. But because he was brave enough to name his mice, it gave me a chance to respond and me to open up and me to be with him
Yeah.
and say, hey, if you
Yeah.
ever need to talk, we got closer, I think, on that hike than I would probably get in 50 meetings with the average person.
Right. Right.
It's
Right. I
mouth
totally
name.
get that. Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you. Book sounds amazing. David, I know that people who are listening are probably like, okay, all right, David, we're convinced. Let's get the book. So,
Yeah.
David, and not only just get the book, I know that you're also coaching people and all of that. So, I need you to give us all of that before we close out and your free worksheet, like where they can go get that.
Yeah.
So, give us all that information so people know where to reach you, support you, work with you, all that stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll give you one link where you can go, and I'll also I'll give you my direct email address. If a lot of
Yeah,
the
let's
stuff
do
on my
it.
website is free. If you have a question, if there's something I can help with, my email address is david@mouseintheroom.com. Please don't add me to any mailing lists. That's my private email. But if
Right.
you would like to reach me or ask me a question, or if I can help you in any way, please reach me at david@mouseintheroom.com. If you want the download, and there's one link for all the stuff I'm going to mention now, mouseintheroom.com. Look on the top left. It's not obvious, but top left at mouseintheroom.com. It'll say mouse naming in 3D, free download. Print off 20 of those worksheets if you like, and just have them ready. And whenever you've got something you're not quite sure how to bring up with anybody in your life, easy worksheet. It'll ask you a few questions, just take you through it. You'll get clarity, and the worksheet will help you decide if it's a mouse worth naming,
Oh, that's cool.
because that's the
That's really
second
cool.
D in the three
Yeah,
Ds.
that's awesome.
It's discover, decide, and then disarm the other person so that they're ready to receive it. That's all there in the worksheet. So do that, and you don't even need to fork out $12.95. If
Right.
this calls to you and you want to get the book, yeah, mouseintheroom.com. It's got a link to Amazon where you can go and get it, an electronic copy, or you can get the print version. And if you've been thinking, you know what, I think a coach could help me enjoy my life more and to make more money in my business. Um, oh, here's a little plug for my coaching. A client reached out this week and said, I'm going to speak to a group of high level entrepreneurs. They're all making millions. And the title of my talk is going to be How Hiring a Business Coach Helped Me Double Revenue and Cut My Workload by 80%. How's that
Okay.
for a title of a talk? And so he's going to share with them the process of working with me. So there's a plug for my coaching.
Yeah.
But that's where it begins. As you can tell, we begin with a business, but we don't end with a business. Mouseintheroom.com, up the top, you'll see coaching in the menu. Click there and apply for a session. There's a
Awesome.
really cool form I have that will ask you some probing questions about your life. It'll take 5 to 10 minutes. Even if we don't work together, I hope you find that very valuable to work out what matters to you and what you
Yeah.
want next. And if you do decide to continue and request a session, I don't charge for those initial sessions because it's how I find the right people to work with. I'll charge you if we do go forward for sure. But that first session is on me because that's how we find out if we connect.
Yeah.
Mouseintheroom.com.
Awesome. David, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're flying out and all that, but yet you still made the time to be on with me today, and I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you very much. This was a lot of fun for me, and I'm glad to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. And guys, thank you so much for joining us and being with us. As you heard, David has all of these great resources for you. So I'm going to make sure to link all of his info below so that you don't miss anything. Go ahead and pick up that book. I already like the way he played around with just your mind, just by calling it Mouse in the Room and having the elephant there so you can connect. You get it. So, guys, thank you for being here. This is Neena Perez. This is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Until next time.